the league at 19.
Okay. And we back. Finally got you. Sorry, you guys, about the technical difficulties. We are back. I don't sound like I was recording out of a potato. We're just going to do this podcast back because why not? We're going to start with the paper bag fans again. I know we kind of like Lance kind of told you like what he had to say about it, but this paper bag stuff, man, like I find it funny. I don't know if you could hear me like the first time, but the paper bag thing, like the fact that this kid wore a paper bag and he's pretty close because he's by the Bally Sports Detroit cameras and they tell him, hey, take off the paper bag. One, shout out to him for sneaking a bag in. They probably didn't know what it was. They probably thought it was lunch or something. Two, the fact that Bally said, hey, you need to take that off. You know, we don't want it to be on camera. I get it. Bally has to stay positive at all times. They can't sell the team, even though I think if George Blaha said that, I would lose my shit. I would laugh. I was like, I actually hope Blaha does say that, like the last game of the season. Like, welcome to another exciting night of NBA basketball. Sell the team. Oh man, that'd be hilarious. But I'm a little off topic, but I love it. Shout out to one of our followers on Facebook for tagging us in that, saying that they couldn't do it. But that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I think it's funny, and shout out to him for sneaking a paper bag in.
No, it's funny. It reminds me of the early 2000s Lions, and I think it's pathetic that the Pistons organization was like, "Hey, you got to stop taking that off." I mean, you got to take that off because you're making us look bad. And they're not, even though the losing streak should be precedent, and that's everybody, the Pistons organization should be handing paper bags to fans as they come into the arena. That's how bad it is. Everybody should get a paper bag to wear. So don't worry about the paper bag. Worry about the losing streak. And I will say one thing about George Blaha. Wasn't he the one that called out the 2 kids fighting in the stands in one of the other games? There were 2 little brothers like punching each other.
I don't know if it was him particularly, but like the fact that you got like 2 little kids that are probably under the age of 10 just duking it out. Like imagine taking to your kid to a Pistons game. Like you got to be some kind of sicko to do that because they're going to lose. The fact that they got them on camera, like I feel bad because like they got put on 15 seconds of fame. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's like a fame. They have like cameras like all across the league, and these 2 little kids like went viral. Like ESPN, Bleacher Report picked it up of these 2 kids fighting because Joel Embiid he dropped like 30 on them in the first half.
Do you think the parents are punishing their kids by taking them to a Pistons game? It's like, dude, if you guys don't behave, we're going to a Pistons game, and you're gonna hate me for it. I think that's what it is. There was a meme too of the 2 kids that were fighting, and they posted a picture of Asar with like his arms folded, and he just looked like an angry parent, just being like, "Why are you embarrassing me like this?" Dude, it just cracked me up.
Yeah, like I do want to show the picture for people that know what we're talking about. So this was on Facebook. Nate Westfield said that they made me take mine off because I was on the television side or televised side. I guess I didn't want the heat. I did tell him that we would talk about it for a couple of minutes. It even says still a Piston fan. Like it's not even negative. It's just like a frowny face. It doesn't say like Pistons suck, sell the team or anything like that. Fact that they said, hey, we can't have that on the airwaves, I think is kind of weak on the Pistons part. Like embrace the 23 game losing streak. I think you tied the Charlotte Bobcats for the most losses.
Yeah, and they broke their own team record of 22. So now this team is it. So there's one other topic I want to talk about. We were talking about it before your mic just decided to give out. And I'll ask you again. I saw a fan reply to one of James Edwards' tweets, basically blaming James Edwards and the other beat writers for the Pistons struggles and the losing streak. And I thought that was wrong, but it made me start to think. So I'm going to ask you, do you think the media actually has power to elicit change in an organization?
I really don't think they do. Not Detroit, anyways. I was telling you, like Philly, absolutely. LA, absolutely. New York, hell yes. I do want to give Omari Sankofa credit because I did read his piece today because he's saying like, the Pistons are going to have to hit that red button if things don't get worse. Like he's the only beat reporter that I will say that's actually, putting his neck out on the line and saying like, hey, like things need to change. You can't keep, losing. You can't tie the record, God forbid. Something has to change, whether that's a trade, whether that's someone getting let go, getting fired. I will applaud him for that, but I don't think anyone in the Detroit Pistons beat can make a change only because we have an owner that isn't involved as much. We kind of only see him. I've told you, we see him 3 times a year. We see him when we draft our rookies every year. See him at a California game, whether that's the Clippers or the Lakers, and then you see him around March and April where the media ask him, hey, what went wrong this year? But like I said, he's not really around that much. That's why I don't think the media here anyways could really force change. I mean, if you're just writing hit piece after hit piece saying like Tom Gores needs to sell the team, the Pistons need change, the Pistons need to move on from Troy Weaver, then yeah. But I think that beat reporter would probably get taken off the beat because it's too much heat. Because I just can't see a beat reporter doing that. I told you last week, there's certain things that beat reporters can't write because of the PR department.
And that's a problem that I have, that James Edwards, Omari Sankofa, Corey Woods, and Mike Curtis, all great people. We've got to talk to all of them on this podcast, and we even got to do a show with Omari on the Pistons Pulse earlier in the year. And it sucks that they can't do their job fully because it does seem like they're handcuffed. It does. I hate to use the word fluff pieces, but sometimes there are pieces that come out where you're like, dude, it's just, what are you trying to say? Because it seems like there's almost, you're saying one thing, but I know there's something else you want to say. And I feel like if they didn't have the handcuffs on them and they were allowed to write whatever they wanted, because I know there's information they have, whether they get it from a source inside the organization, that they probably could write something that might spark something minor in the team and actually cause change, but they can't do it because, there are people telling them, dude, if you do, we're going to, they might get their access revoked. It might be limited, something, where something could cause them not to be able to do their job the way they do it now. And that's just a shame. And it's funny to me that there are some small market teams out there that will complain that the larger markets have an advantage over them. But in order to be in one of those large markets, you got to have thicker skin and you got to be able to handle what the media will come at you. And until you do that, you'll always be a small market. And I don't know, that is something that's just been bothering me all week, and something I wanted to talk about on this podcast, even though it has really nothing to do with just the Pistons, like how we normally talk about them. But I thought it was something that was important that needed to be said.
No, I kind of feel bad for beat reporters in the aspect of fans at their ass every day.
Yeah.
The fact that they have to quote tweet, like, I know James gets it. Mike, not so much. I know Omari gets it. Even Corey Woods, who we've had on the show, he gets it too. It's just fans are really frustrated, and that's usually who they take it out on, is the beat reporters, and they're not responsible for any of the free agent acquisitions. They're not responsible for overpaying for free agents or front office executives. Like, they're not responsible for anything. All their job is to report what they see and what they hear. And they can't even do that 100% of the time. So I hope things do get better, though. I really do. I mean, we've been doing this podcast for over a year, and I think we've spent more time talking about draft prospects and what's wrong with this team and why the rebuild has been taking so long, rather than maybe can the Pistons, push for a play-in spot. God forbid. I can't wait for that day to come. I know it's coming. I just don't know when.
I hope it comes soon. I really do. So we have a new team, same problems for John Collins. He's available. He's back on the trade block just like he was in Atlanta. Utah has said, we want to move on from you, man. He's 26 years old. He's entering his prime. He's a forward that is averaging 15 and 9 with 1 block while shooting 48 from the field, 38 from the three, 75% from the line. What's the problem in Utah? He hasn't bought into the offense or the defensive system. Offensively, I would be intrigued if the Pistons brought this guy in because he's the type of forward that could help Cade and Duren out, especially if you want to continue to play two bigs. This is the type of big you play in a two big lineup. Someone that's mobile, he can hit some outside shots, he can play in the post. He can also be a pick and pop player with Cade or Ivy or Killian or whoever you want to throw out there. And he's also a guy that you can just throw a ball and get him a bucket. He struggles defensively. Opponents are actually shooting 6% better when being defended by him. And the one larger issue I have is just his contract. He has 3 years left, I think at about $25 million. And the reason it's not the money that I have a problem with, because it only takes up about like 18% of the cap space. It's just that would conflict with re-signing Cade and some of the other young guys when those guys are looking for extensions.
Yeah, like we talked about John Collins last year, I believe, and I told you he's that re-gifting player. Like everyone, like around Christmas time, there's that one person in their family where they re-gift everything, and to me, that's John Collins. Like every year, he's available on the trade block. It's another team that basically traded absolutely nothing to get him. And like, if you look at his numbers, you're like, what's Utah's problem? Like offensively, if you look at the numbers, 14 and a half, 8.5 rebounds, 1 block, he's shooting 48% from the field, 38% from three. Like what's the problem? And I think you said it, it's on the defensive end of the floor. This year with the Utah Jazz, if you're combining all of the games, he's a minus 187. I mean, that tells you all. If you follow the plus minus, that tells you all you need to know about John Collins. Like offensively, phenomenal talent. To your point, yeah, like around 26 million per year, and I think he'll be a UFA when he's like 26 or 27. Don't quote me on that. I'm just 29. Going off 29. Okay, yeah, yeah. Don't listen to me. But I think offensively, he's a good player. It's just on the defensive end of the floor. That's where he kind of leaves you wanting more because you see the talent he has where he can, stretch a team out from the perimeter. He's just a human highlight reel in terms of just being a lob threat. But I don't know. Like, is this the type of move that really moves the needle for the team? Instead of, on pace for 8 wins, maybe you win 11.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, is that something you really want to do? Because if you look at the Pistons cap space next year, $16 million right off the bat was going to Isaiah Stewart for the Pistons. If you were trade for John Collins, it's another $26 million. So you would use half of your cap space potentially. So who knows like what they're going to do, during this deadline. We'll get into it a little bit later in the podcast, but that would be half of your cap space spent on Isaiah Stewart and John Collins. And you also have to remember Cade Cunningham is extension eligible this summer too.
Yep.
So those are all the things that you have to kind of remind yourself of. But to your point, I think he would be a good forward to pair. If the Pistons want to continue to run this two big lineup in the front court, to me, I just don't think it's going to work. I just don't. I just think you need more perimeter shooting around these bigs, and that's something that we don't really have a lot of is perimeter shooting right now.
Yeah, and if this Detroit team wasn't such a mess and the roster seemed like they were heading into a direction of actually winning games, and John Collins could just provide you with a little bit more offense, whether it's off the bench or whether it's starting at the 4, I would say, yeah, make a plunge. Try to bring him in because I do think he could help out in ways that Isaiah Stewart or Marvin Bagley can't. So I would take the chance on him, but right now I just don't see it because I don't want to look at this roster 3 years from now and John Collins is second option on this team, maybe behind Cade Cunningham. I feel like that would be more of a waste of the resources that are available to the Pistons. So it would be a no for me on John Collins, even though I do really like his game. And I mean, he's far away from being the 22-10 player he was in his third year in the league, where it looked like he was just going to be, multiple time All-Star. But yeah, it would just be a no for me. So according to James Edwards III, the Detroit Pistons are in the market for a brand new forward. Two names that have popped up are OG Anunoby and Tobias Harris, who's a former Detroit Piston. Now, when I look at both of these names, OG's the one that stands out just a little more because he is more of a two-way player, even though Tobias Harris has made improvements defensively. He's also a really good offensive player. OG, I think I would give him the advantage offensively over OG Anunoby. But man, I just think like, dude, if you had to take the chance on the two, I would probably lean toward OG just because he's averaging 15, 4, and 3 with 1 steal per game, but he's shooting 48, 39, and only 68% from the line. But it's outside of his offensive game. Oh my God, dude. Just imagine him and Asar on like at that 3 and the 4 position and just switching everything. It'd be so difficult to score on those two. It would just be so much fun in Detroit. Just have those two just running around defensively. But out of both of these names, who are you more interested in?
Obviously, OG Anunoby. But I did want to put James's piece for people that aren't subscribed to The Athletic, which I get. You don't want to pay for paid subscriptions, but this is just like a screenshot that I took out of his article. And I'm just going to read this last paragraph so people can see it. So the league sources tell The Athletic Detroit is expected to be active during the trade market over the next few weeks and are eyeing a forward. One player I'm hearing the Pistons are interested in, as the rest of the league, is Toronto's OG Anunoby. However, it's possible Detroit will wait and see if they can land Anunoby in the open trade market next summer. The two-way wing has a player option for next season that he'll most certainly decline and avoid giving up some of its young players. Tobias Harris, who is an unrestricted free agent after this season, is another name the Pistons could target sooner than later if he becomes available before the NBA's February trade deadline. So I did want to put that on the screen for people that aren't subscribed to The Athletic. That is where the source is coming from. We've had James on the podcast, I believe, twice. Really reliable source, great dude. But obviously I would love OG. But to James's point, I think half the league wants OG Anunoby. I saw, was it Sacramento wanted him? And then you just have Keegan Murray erupt for like a 40 burger. The other night. He looks great. I think if you're Detroit, you're going to have to trade not one, but maybe two of your pieces in the core four, in my opinion.
I think Sacramento might be more interested in Pascal Siakam because I know he might be coming available in Toronto as well, and they want Keegan Murray for him. I would be surprised, though, if OG declined his player option. And the reason is he's averaging less points. He's getting to the free throw line less while shooting a worse percentage from the free throw line. He's averaging almost a steal less per game than he did last year. And I think that had a lot to do with Nick Nurse's defensive scheme, where it was more of an attacking defense. So it put OG Anunoby in position to actually steal the ball and play defense like that. So I would be surprised. 19 million is a hard to give up, and I don't know if he would command that on the open market. I think that he would be one of those players that would be wise to take the 19 million, play with it for a year, and just show out on the 1 year remaining, and then go into free agency with a large to command more money. Because I don't think he would get. I don't know if he's a 25 million a year guy right now, because he also is going to be 27 next season. So he's already in his prime right now, and he's already showed a decline from last year to this year.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. I do want to disagree with you in this part of your argument. I think he's a $30 to $35 million a year player.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is I think a lot of people around the league, even last year, Toronto wasn't really budging. Like, people asked about Pascal Siakam. They asked about OG Anunoby. They even asked about Fred VanVleet. I think the ballpark for an OG is probably anywhere from 30 to 35 million, maybe more. I don't know. I think he's a very valuable wing. He's the type of wing that Detroit needs, a 3-and-D wing, but I just don't really know what the trade market for him is, because I know Toronto, I think they rejected, I think it was 3 or 4 first-round picks from Memphis. And it's just like, obviously those first-round picks they weren't going to be lottery-bound first-round picks by any means, but it kind of tells me like what the value for him is around the league. Like, he's a guy that is going to be very targeted from contenders to teams that are maybe, a 7th, 6th seed to try to get them over the hump. I think for me, it's a pipe dream at this point for the Pistons. I think Tobias Harris to me is more realistic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor with you. I want OG over Tobias Harris, but I do like both of them. Also, OG, real quick, defensively, he is opponents are shooting about 2% worse when he's defending him. And with Tobias Harris, it's actually 6% worse, which is crazy for Tobias, because he was never known as like a defensive player. Yeah, actually, my bad. It's 2%. That I'm thinking the 6% was what I said from John Collins. They're shooting 6% better. But anyways, Tobias Harris, he is averaging 16 a game with, let me pull these numbers up, 17 a game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, shooting 52% from the field, 34% from 3, and 90% from the free throw line. And he has been playing better defensively. The only reason I would not trade for him is because this is the last year of his contract. Now, he is actually making $39 million this year, which is just insane. At 31, I don't think he's a $39 million per year guy anyway. The only concern I would have with trading for Tobias Harris is, what are we giving up? And then 2, would he actually resign if he was traded to Detroit? Because I would much rather go after him in free agency after Detroit has had a chance to restructure this roster and clean it up a little bit, because I don't think a guy like him that would be entering, I believe, year 14 of his career. Yeah, year 14 of his career. I don't think he would resign with the Detroit Pistons the way that they are. Going from the Philadelphia 76ers, where they're winning some games, they look like a team that could come out of the East and compete for a championship. Then you're going to Detroit in the midst of one of the league's worst losing streaks ever. I don't know if you'd resign, and I'm just afraid of what we would give up for Tobias Harris to bring him in just for a couple of months. And, maybe he moves the needle for a couple more wins and then pushes us out of contention for the number 1 overall pick. I don't know.
The reason why I said he's more gettable is because I think you could package Bojan and someone else.
Yeah,
because
it's true.
Philly would love a player like Bojan. Like, any Philly fan right now would probably say, yeah, we'd love Bojan on our team. It would help our bench. He's just instant firepower. I think you could throw any mixture of Bojan and higher salary, whether that's James Wiseman, whether that's Marvin Bagley, whatever. Joe Harris, wishful thinking. But to your point, yeah, it's risky. It's very risky. He's on the last year of a deal. There's no guarantee if you do trade for him that he would resign with a real building team like the Detroit Pistons. He's in the later half of his career where he probably wants to play meaningful basketball. He wants to play to compete for a championship on a playoff team. That's the only reason why I really thought that he'd be more realistic than OG, because I just know that there are so many NBA teams right now that are probably going to be bidding for OG over the next couple of months if Toronto does want to bite the bullet and trade him. I really don't know what Toronto's doing. I mean, they said they wanted to build around Scotty Barnes and OG Anunoby. But I don't know, man. Like, if he's available, you have to at least make an effort to see what the asking price is for OG. But me personally, I think Tobias would be a little bit more realistic just from the standpoint of if Philly does want to get off that contract, maybe they want to have more floor spacing out there. I feel like a Tobias Boan and another salary filler could possibly get the job done if that's something Philly does want to do. Who knows what they want to do, but I'll just leave it at that.
I mean, it would be nice. I mean, either way with Boan and Joe Harris, I don't know what they do with him. The money would be potentially coming off the salary cap anyways. But I guess if you traded for Tobias Harris and he decided to walk, you have like $40 million more to play with next offseason. So that's nice too. But I don't know. I think it would result in at least one of the young guys. And I'm more apt to letting one of the young guys go for an OG Anunoby versus Tobias Harris right now.
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't hate Tobias, but then it kind of has me thinking like, you had a forward in Jeremy Grant who I was looking back, like Cade's rookie year, if you look at the starting lineup, like that's the most spacing he's ever had. And it's just like, you look to now, it's just like less spacing and more lane clogging and guys that can't hit a 3-point shot to save their life. Like I was looking at a box score. It was like during, I think, Valley's press conference with Monty. It was like 6 for 23 or 6 for 28. And I was just like, dude, that's god awful. Like, what the hell?
One final piece of news, just an injury. It's with Isaiah Stewart. He will miss the Pistons next game. It'll be his second game in a row. He has a shoulder injury. That was reported by Omari Sankofa II. Just wanted to quickly shout that out. Not going to talk too much about Isaiah Stewart. I know Marvin Bagley is back, so we're not going to be seeing Kevin Knox at the 5, hopefully, but we'll see.
What have you thought about James Wiseman lately?
Man, you made me put my cup down. I didn't even get to take a drink. He looked pretty good against Philly. What I was impressed by was the screens he was setting, but where he was relocating amongst the defense, it seemed like he was finding the space in the defense and catching the ball and making a real quick decision, which was just to dunk it or lay it up off the backboard. So I was impressed with that. The defense still wasn't very good. I know he was playing against Joel Embiid, and that's tough for any defender in the NBA. But offensively, I just liked where he was finding his spots in the defense and he was finishing the play. That's what I liked from James Wiseman. He looked pretty good on the offensive side, but I still think he gets tunnel vision offensively where, there was some joke about should the Pistons build around James Wiseman? And it just reminded me of his tunnel vision. It was pretty funny.
So I was watching back the game, even though people told me not to. I did.
Jeez.
I know, right? I'm a sicko. And I'm watching. I'm like, okay, he looks a little bit more confident. It looks like he's been putting the work in during practice, or maybe he's just learning from watching guys like Bagley and Stewart, and during the season, just getting reps that way by watching. He seems a little bit more under control. To your point, I do agree. At times he does get tunnel vision a little bit, but to me, man, like what I was so excited was, dude, he set a motherfucking screen.
Yeah.
No one on this team can set a screen. Like he set a screen, and I was just like, finally, someone that can set a screen. Give Cade a little bit of separation, man. Like, holy shit. I'm happy for him though. It looks like he's getting his confidence back a little bit. And like defensively, like, yeah, he's not locked down by any means, but you could tell that he's at least trying a little bit.
Yeah. He was showing a little bit of effort for sure. And it's still really tough to evaluate him because this team is still so bad, but just being able to find those holes in the defense and catch the ball, because we do have one big on the team that really does still struggle to catch the ball and finish a play. And just to be able to see that along with actually setting a screen and setting a good screen, that was nice to see from James Wiseman. And if he can just do those things, he will probably always have a spot on an NBA team. Maybe not as a starter, a big contributor, but if you can do those things and you can fill in for a pinch, you'll always have a spot on an NBA roster.
Yeah, I've just noticed like lately he seems more confident. He seems like I know he's kind of like a joke among Pistons Twitter, because there's like a group of Pistons Twitter where they just anything James Wiseman, like if someone tweets out like a selfie of James Wiseman, they're the first out there to talk shit about the guy. And I kind of feel bad for him in that aspect. But it's good to see that he's out there trying and, trying to get better at least. That's all I ask is, this, get better each day, get better each game. And I've seen, progression over this last week or so with him.
For sure. So Johnny Kane asked Monty Williams, you hold them to 26 points in the opening quarter, then they drop 35, 33, and 30. How hard was it for you guys tonight? Then Monty Williams responds, you can say it, it's deflating. I mean, it is what it is. When you hold a team like that to 26 points, you have to capitalize. I know we've all been pretty tough on Monty Williams, and deservedly so. The criticism has been fair when it comes to his rotations and the substitutions, and just it seems like he's holding certain guys accountable versus others. But I do think he has a lot going on in his personal life, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, his wife was sick before he signed with Detroit, right? And
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I thought there was something about that, which, look, dude, if you got other things going on, the only thing I'm asking as a fan, maybe just step away for a little while and handle the things that are more important than basketball. So my question to you is, do you think Monty Williams should just step away for a little while?
But before that, I know his wife had cancer. I'm not sure if she still does, and I'm not going to speak on that because that would be really irresponsible of me to do that.
Okay.
So I don't know. To answer your question, I don't think he's going to step away because of the paycheck. And I know he would probably still get paid regardless. I mean, we've had one of our assistants, Dan Burke. He's been away, I think, since the Charlotte game. And that's the last time the Pistons won. He was that defensive guru that was, going to get the Pistons, back to playing defense. But he stepped away because he's got personal matters. I don't think Monty's going to step away. I think that the paycheck at the end of the day is the reason why he did come here. And I think even people watching live, they would probably take $80 million too.
Oh, I'm not saying resign from the position. I'm just saying, if you need a few weeks or a little while just to step away and handle something else. Because I'm reading online right now what it is, and I don't really know if it's appropriate for me to even talk about it. But there are some issues that are going on in his personal life. Dude, if you need to take a break, it's fine. And I don't think any of us would hold it against you. Like I said, there are things that are more important than coaching the Detroit Pistons right now. And if you wanted to step aside, that would be fine. And if you wanted to come back at a later time, I think Tom Gores, Troy Weaver, and all of the fans would totally understand that. And I'm just basically trying to step aside and a step away from the criticism of them and just, maybe point to a larger issue going on. And dude, go ahead and keep the money, keep your job, just handle things that are more important right now.
I don't even think time away would really help this team. And I've told you last week, I don't really think he was the right coach for this team. Not to say that he's not a good coach. I think he's a good veterans coach. And this team doesn't really have the veterans for him to really be successful. I thought, Kevin Ollie was a name that we had talked about ad nauseum during the summer. Charles Lee. I'm forgetting the Golden State assistant too. I mean, I just thought you needed someone a little bit younger that could relate to these guys and grow with them. And I think he's having a really hard time connecting with these guys. And his message to them is, I guess he asked his guys, what do you think Philly is shooting from the field? And I guess he said they all said 60%. And he's like, no, guys, they're only shooting 40%. You can still get back into this game. I think it was the second Philly game.
Oh, okay.
And I think he's just having a really hard time getting through these guys. And I think that the team in itself is losing confidence. I saw Cade against the Bucks. I've never seen him just quit. You could tell he was just frustrated. The Bucks defense is picking him apart. He just physically quit. He's just you know what? I can't do anything. I literally can't. And it's really like the word he said, it's deflating. Yeah. It is deflating watching, young kids, coming out of the draft where, they're only playing, 30, 40 games a year, and they're these top recruits and they've won their whole life, and they come to a rebuilding team that has won 50 games or won 4 games out of their last 50 attempts. It's really hard to watch.
It really is. It really is. So losing in the NBA can be tough on any player. I've heard Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles talk about this on their podcast, the Knuckleheads. What I think is happening is losing has become so normal for the young guys that no matter what veterans you put around them, they still won't lose. That's how losing is so infectious to this team. So my question is to you, do you still believe that the core four can win in the NBA?
It would be a hot take for me to say yes, because I just mentioned, like, since trading for Saddiq Bey, the Pistons are 4-48. Like, they're not winning basketball games. Do I still believe in the core four? Sure, they're talented, but I think that when you look at Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, and Jalen Duren, they're all talented. But there are conversations of, can Asar and Jalen Duren play together, because they're two players that are non-perimeter. They're not players that can really shoot a 3-point shot effectively. Cade Cunningham can get hot from 3. Jaden Ivey is an improved 3-point shooter. I don't know. I really don't. I'm going to say no, though. I don't think they can win in the NBA. I think something has to change, whether you have 2 of them coming off the bench or you kind of split their minutes where they're not on the floor together, because I think when you look at the NBA is such a perimeter-driven league right now. And when you have 2 out of your 4 guys that you call the core 4 that can't shoot a 3-point shot, you're not going to win many games in the NBA when you have NBA teams shooting anywhere from 30 to 43s a night.
Yeah, this was a tough realization for me. I think I was tweeting some negative stuff out against the second Philadelphia 76ers game. Like, time to hit the panic button. This is not a simple fix. They might need to restart. It doesn't matter who you bring in. They have a huge mess in front of them. Just crap like that. Because I am fed up. I don't think, even if Troy brought in veterans this season and the ship started to correct itself a little bit, I think the losing has been so dramatic for these guys that they're just broke. They're just broke as a core. I mean, Jaden Ivey looks somewhat of a shell of himself. Asar Thompson, the way he started out from summer league to the start of the season till now, he looks like a different player. Jalen Duren, he's been in and out of the lineup due to injuries. Cade Cunningham, we saw him against Philadelphia. He only had like 4 points, I think 3 rebounds and 3 assists, and he looked defeated in that game. He looked fed up. And then even Isaiah Stewart, it just seems like this guy that is known for his hard work and his hustle, it seems like it's getting to him that even when he's doing those things, it's not translating to wins. So I don't believe in this core 4 anymore. And I think that there's going to have to be some dramatic changes. Because I was thinking about this too. Even if you brought in a new GM to replace Troy Weaver, Cade Cunningham is going into his 4th year and hasn't had very much success in winning the game. And let's say the new GM comes in and it takes him a couple of years. We're talking like 8 years before Cade Cunningham could potentially win in the NBA. That is so defeating and deflating to a player that I don't know how you overcome that. I just think we're witnessing a really good to great player in Cade Cunningham that will not find success in this organization. And we probably won't see the success that he could have in him carrying a team until he gets to his 2nd team. And it seems like that's the path we're heading down right now as fans as we watch him. So we'll talk about it here in a couple of topics, and I'm not really going to talk about it too much right now. But there is something dramatic I would do for this team to start the rebuild from the rebuild.
Yeah, it's to your point. Like, Cade's your franchise player, and you haven't committed to building around him.
Yeah.
And I think that's my biggest issue. Like they go into this offseason and tell the fans, like, hey, we're just gonna evaluate everyone and see where we're at. And during this losing streak, I think it's been rough on not only the fans, but it's been rough on the players. But if you're not committed to Cade Cunningham, you're not committed to Jaden Ivey, you're not committed to any of these guys, like what's the point of drafting them where you're drafting them? Like I love Marcus Sasser, I really do, but the Pistons didn't need another guard.
Yes,
they needed a wingman. They needed a forward. They need more forward depth. Like nothing against Isaiah Livers, but they need players to play above Isaiah Livers. They need a legitimate 3-and-D wing. Like obviously they drafted a star, but like they needed to go out and go get a Kelly Oubre. And I sound like a broken record, but Kelly Oubre is having one of his better seasons right now with Philly. He's showing it on both ends of the floor, and they got him on a vets minimum. I think Troy Weaver is really good at evaluating talent, but hey, like if the talent doesn't fit together, it doesn't fit together. And to your point, like you might have to reset the rebuild, which could take even longer. And then you have to kind of evaluate saying, okay, like which of these guys that I've drafted should I try to build around? And I've told you, I don't think they've committed to building around anybody yet. They want to see who they want to build around. They want to see, do I build around Jaden Ivey? Do I build around Cade? Do I build around Duren? I'm not going to try to sell fans hope. I'm not going to say like, hey, they could go out this summer and, pull a Houston and just, throw the bag like in a Fred VanVleet or a Dylan Brooks and, get, great vets like Jeff Green, because I don't really know if, vets, even if you overpay them, would want to come here.
Yeah. And I don't think it would matter even if you did. That's how bad the losing has gotten to this team. So, man, it's depressing. I'm glad you brought up Marcus Sasser because he is a fun player to watch, but like I'm even looking at him and I'm looking at the roster. I don't even know why you did it because you also brought in Monte Morris in the offseason. So you were playing Cade at point, Killian at point, Monte at point, and then you bring in another point guard that needs minutes that you have had shown no intention of putting him in the G League to go and get those minutes. And maybe it would have been different if Monte Morris was healthy, but I mean, is Marcus Sasser that special of a player that you have to trade up and get? I think one of Troy's biggest mistakes as a GM is not taking a chance on the potential of some of these players that drop in the draft. Like I forget the guy's name that we were talking about, but he was kind of compared to Brandon Miller a little bit, but he had more of an attitude problem, but he was more explosive. I think he might have played for Houston or Alabama. I know he's on the tip of your tongue. I can't think of the player's name.
G.G. Jackson. He was a second-round pick.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, even though he doesn't have the best reputation, why not take a chance on a guy like that could blossom into something very good in the NBA? I think that's when Troy has – I mean, I'll applaud him because he has stuck to his guns about going for high-character guys. And I sometimes think high-character guys have less ability than others. And sometimes you just need to take a step out of the box and say, look, I'm going to go for a less than high character guy, if that's what you want to say. And that's been one of my biggest problems with Troy Weaver because, yeah, the pieces are cool, but they just don't fit. And it seems like the ceiling is lower for a lot of these guys when you really look at them.
Yeah, this is not a slight at Marcus Sasser. I think Marcus Sasser is going to be a phenomenal player. My only issue was with, trading back up into the first round. I expected a wing, a small forward, something. I wasn't really expecting that because I was like, okay, you still have Killian Hayes. You have Cade Cunningham. You have Jaden Ivey. I didn't expect them to go and get another guard. Like, is Sasser supposed to be this player that is going to replace Killian Hayes in the near future? Is he a guy that you think that could be more of that shooting guard prototype next to a Cade Cunningham or a Jaden Ivey? I think Sasser is very talented, and it kills me to see how they're using him right now.
Yep.
Because I watch and this kid's getting garbage time, and I don't understand it. It's like if you want some buckets, you want some defense, throw the kid out there. He's not going to get better if you give him garbage time. I don't really know why he's in the doghouse now. I remember the first time we played the Bucks, he was the reason why they got back into that game. He just lit fire. He's a spark plug out there. This was no slight at Marcus Sasser, by the way. This has more to do with the Pistons front office and their decision to stockpile on guards because maybe they're not too sure about the guard position, the backcourt position right now. I think Sasser's going to be a phenomenal player, and he's going to probably be here for the next 3 to 4 years. Depends, what happens with the rookie extensions and stuff like that. Like him as a player, but my only thing was kind of just looking at our wing depth, our lack of wing depth, I should say. Nothing against Sasser. I like Sasser as a player. You know that.
Well, also, it made more sense at the time because we all thought, okay, Killian Hayes' time's up in Detroit because they didn't extend him last year. And you go back into the first round and draft another guard that, and we've both talked about, and even Monty Williams has said he's more of a compliment to Cade than some of the other guards on this team. But now and you're right, he is in the doghouse for some reason after he said that. So at the time of the pick, you could have justified it because we thought Killian Hayes was on his way out, but Killian Hayes is still playing, and I just don't know what it is. This team, we're going to bring this up. Rasheed Wallace, I don't mean to end the topic this way, but I think it's fair to talk about it now. Rasheed Wallace compares this Pistons team to the Clippers of the early 2000s, and I have to agree with him because, the extensions are coming up. This team is too young. There's no veterans. It doesn't all make sense. I mean, I'm looking at this old Clippers team, and it's so similar to the Pistons that everybody is under like 25 years old, and they have two players. They had two players on the team that had three players on the team that had more than 5 years experience. And they only had two guys that were 30 or older. And it's so similar to this Pistons team. And I'll say it here. It does not make sense. You can't build a team this way in the NBA. Like, contracts come up. Guys have to get paid. You eventually have to trade someone to make some moves that help this team go forward.
Yeah, I think, Rasheed was on Gil's Arenas podcast this past week, and they were asking him about the Pistons, obviously, because, he did win a championship with the Pistons in 2004, and they had a lot of success while he was here. But I think him comparing them to, like, the Darius Miles Clippers was so spot on. Like, if you remember those Clippers teams, they were really bad, and they really didn't amount to anything. And, we've talked about it. Like, they have stockpiled talent, but the talent doesn't, the puzzles don't fit. Like, when you have a puzzle and you're like, oh, this piece goes here and it doesn't fit, that's kind of like what the core is right now. Like, they're talented pieces, but the pieces just don't go together right now. And obviously that's not the player's fault. That's on the GM to try to build a proper team. Like I said, I think Sasser's talented. I think Cade's talented. Ivy, Asar, Duran, they're all talented players. It's just, you're not really building a team for these guys to win basketball games. You're not building a team for them to be successful. I mean, you could draft in the top 5 until you're blue in the face. If you're just drafting for talent and not fit to help this team get better, you can't go into a year 4 of a rebuild and draft for fit. You just can't. You have to go for immediate impact right away. You got to go for a guy that can help your team win basketball like right now.
Yeah, and it just sucks because you look at the young guys, and I don't even think this Pistons team is as fun as those Clippers teams. I mean, they went 31-51 Darius Miles rookie year, and there's a handful of highlights we still see to this day from that team. I would have more fun watching this Pistons team if they were playing like that, or they were running up and down and they were just doing all these crazy lineups, just mixing and matching everybody. That would be a lot of fun. We're just not seeing it. And the reason it sucks is because there is a lot of talent on this Pistons team between those 4 players. And unfortunately, we're going to see some of those guys blossom on different teams and in different cities. And we're always going to have it in the back of our mind, like, damn, what if, You know, what if we had kept those 4 together? And what if we had a GM that had built around those 4 and did it the right way? How promising would it be? You know, because some of these guys have personalities where it seems like they'd be willing to take a pay cut if the team was winning, if the team was heading in the right direction. And unfortunately, we're just not going to be able to see it. We are rooting for guys that will not be on this team in a couple of years. And that just, dude, that breaks my heart as a fan. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, to Rasheed Wallace's point, he said, those rookie extensions are coming up. Like, Cade Cunningham is extension eligible. I guarantee you that front office will give him similar to what Tyrese Halliburton signed this past summer.
Yeah.
Like probably a $200 million contract. Then you have to worry about Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren.
Yep.
And obviously, you're going to have to wait and see what happens with Duren. Can his ankles hold up for a full season? Can he play more than 10 games without, re-injuring his ankle? What are the plans for Ivy? Do the Pistons view him as a piece? Does Monty Williams see him more as a bench player? Don't know. And then, you have Asar Thompson, a guy that I think a lot of fans absolutely love because he gives effort out there 110% of the time. He's willing to fight over a screen. He's willing to do the dirty work. He's this kind of like that glue guy. But those are all rookies that you have drafted in the top 5 outside of Duren that you're going to have to extend. And those rookie contract extensions can get very expensive. We saw last year that the Pistons did not want to pay Saddiq Bey, so that's why they traded him to Atlanta in a 3-team trade with the Warriors and the Hawks, because they did not want to extend Saddiq Bey because Saddiq Bey was asking for the $20 million range in terms of a rookie contract extension. Now, time will tell whether, Saddiq Bey will get that, that contract that he's seeking. But, yeah, man, it's not looking good. It's really not. Usually by year 4 of a rebuild, you have teams that are trying to push for the playoffs, or they're in the playoff picture. We've gone backwards. Cade's rookie year, I think they won 22 or 23 games. Obviously, he gets hurt, not his fault, but his team's on pace for 8 wins this season. You might be a win above the Bobcats 7-57 record.
God, that's so terrible. And I know some fans will point to Oklahoma City Thunder and be like, well, look at those guys. They have a young team. They have a bunch of former first-round picks playing for them. Not all those guys were drafted in the top 5. I mean, I think the only guy so far that they've drafted in the top 5 that's playing on their roster right now, and that's Chet Holmgren. Shea was drafted by the Clippers, and I think he was outside of the top 10. Jalen Williams, I believe, was the 16th overall pick. Josh Giddey was 8th, and he might be traded. Kaysen Wallace, I think, was 13th. So it's a little bit different how they've built their team. They can afford to have all those first-round picks and allow them to develop and then offer them contracts, because those contracts, I mean, if you got 3 guys in the top 5, that's a lot of money going to those guys based on where they're drafted. And that just sucks, man. So now that we know nothing is working in Detroit, the roster needs to be redone from top to bottom. And it looks like the Pistons are heading for another reset or another rebuild. Should they reset and start over? And my thoughts are, man, people are going to hate me for saying this. Right now, dude, I would seriously consider trading Cade Cunningham and just restarting the whole thing. I would seriously consider it. I would just think about building around Duren and Asar, and I would try to trade Cade Cunningham to the highest bidder right now and just restarting this whole thing. Because like I said earlier on the podcast, dude, you might go 8 years with Cade Cunningham on your team before you actually have a winning season. And that just cannot happen. That is not good, because you'll never win a championship if it takes that long. So now that he's in year 3, he's playing pretty well. A lot of teams and a lot of fans are looking at him like, oh, yeah, he might be a really good second option on a really good team. I would seek out the highest bidder, and I would seriously entertain calls if they were coming in for him, and just hitting the panic and reset button right now.
This is what I would do. I'm moving Cade Cunningham to small forward. I'm not having Cade Cunningham have the ball in his hands. And to your question, I don't really think you can reset when there's no value. I don't think you're going to get what you think you're going to get for the guys that you drafted in the top 5, even though they're top 5 picks. GMs around the league are going to see that you've lost historically over the last couple of seasons. You're not going to get what you think you're going to get for a Cade Cunningham, a Jaden Ivey, or an Asar Thompson. I think what you have to do is reevaluate your talent and put these players in the position to be successful. I think Cade Cunningham, to me, would thrive better off ball than being a primary ball handler. I think guys like Marcus Sasser and Jaden Ivey should be your point guards. I really do. And I think what you really have to do is you have to get a center that knows how to set a screen and run more dribble handoff offenses. Because I don't think if you try to put all these guys in the trading block, try to reset or rebuild, I don't think you're going to get maximum value back for these top 5 picks outside of Jalen Duren. I really don't. I think if you look around the league right now, there's not a lot of teams that are looking for a guy that shoots mid-range like Cade Cunningham. He doesn't really thrive shooting 3-pointers like he does the mid-range jump shot. That's why I thought, placing Cade at a shooting guard or a small forward position would be better for him because then he can play off ball. I think these guys are talented, but I don't really think trying to trade and resetting your rebuild, I don't really think that's the way to go. I think the way to go is you get these mid-tier free agents to come to your team. Like maybe you tried to, like Herb Jones this past summer. The Pistons could have tried to bid against the Pelicans for a Herb Jones. They didn't. They could have done the same thing with PJ Washington, who signed for less than Isaiah Stewart, or Herb Jones, that I should say. There are certain types of moves that a GM could make to make this team marginally better, and then you can try to improve and build chemistry with these guys. But I don't really think trying to reset what you've done over the past 4 years is really going to help you in the long term. If anything, it's just going to push you backwards. And this rebuild, instead of a 4-year, 5-year rebuild, maybe it turns into an 8, 9, 10-year rebuild because you don't really know what you're doing. And I just don't think if you do that, I don't think Troy Weaver is going to be the GM here. I don't. I don't think you can lose for that much and keep your job. I really don't. And I like Troy. I think he's good at evaluating talent. I just, I have my beef with the free agent stuff, but hey, no GM's perfect. But I think if you move Cade off ball, you have Sasser or Ivy be your, primary point guard. You still have Asar, you have Duren. You just kind of have to reset what your starting lineup may possibly be and go get guys that can complement their game, not make it more difficult.
Yeah, I think, and I'm talking about like in a world where Troy Weaver's not the GM. I'm talking about if you're a new GM coming in, I would, like I said, I would build around Duren and Asar. And just because I think those guys are still so, and I mean, even though Jaden Ivey and Duren have the same years of experience, he just turned 20 years old. Asar is 20 years old, going on 21. He's still fresh. It's his first year in the NBA. I think those guys are still new where they haven't been broken yet. And I think Cade and Jaden Ivey have been to a degree. Because like I said earlier, it seems like Jaden Ivey's a shell of himself playing under Monty Williams. I don't even think you would get much if you traded him right now. I really don't. And I don't even think you'd get that much for Cade Cunningham either. But even if you traded them and you restarted, you're probably right. It would take another 4 years before you were even competitive. But I still think it's going to take another 4 years before you're competitive, even with Cade Cunningham on this team, just because I think this team is so bad that it's going to take a whole lot of convincing to bring some players in to make them at least competitive. And I just don't even know if putting Marcus Sasser in the starting lineup is good enough, because I don't know if he's the point guard that you really need to start to win games, because he always reminded me of kind of like a Jason Terry or a Lou Williams, someone that can be a scorer off your bench and contribute in that ways. I just don't know if I see him as a full-time starting point guard, someone that you could lead the team and run the offense. I don't think they have that guy in the team. And if they do, it's Monte Morris, and he's already 28 years old, and I don't know how much he impacts winning anyway. So that's why I would say, like, I would just build around Duren and Asar, because also I don't even know if Cade and Asar can play the 3 and the 4 together. Where do you play Asar if you start Cade at the 3? Like, that's why this whole draft best player available thing was always such a problem for me. I mean, it'd be all right if Cade is your point guard, I mean, if he's your lead guard, but I mean, it's just so much of a mess. I would just, like I said, I would just blow things up and restart.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. I think blowing up this team and restarting would be really premature, because the GM hasn't done his job in terms of building a team, because he wants to reevaluate the team and see what the team needs. This team needs perimeter shooting. This team needs more wings. I said move Cade to the 2. You could put Asar at the 3 if you wanted to. But like Jaden Ivey at point guard, I don't think would be a bad decision. I really don't. Now, obviously, Monty Williams would probably prefer Killian Hayes at point guard over Jaden Ivey. And, the rotations this year would back that up. But I think, trying to sell on these guys right now, I get it. You want to do it while their value is somewhat high. I would just say we have to wait and see what they do this deadline. Troy could pull what he did on draft night, his first day on the job, where he's just having a fire sale. He sells Bojan, he sells Alec Burks, he sells Monte Morris, he sells Joe Harris. Maybe he sells a guy that, he drafted. Maybe he sells on Livers. Maybe he can kind of build a somewhat competent team and try to, build pieces around this team to at least help them win some basketball games. Because right now, you can't go 6 for 30 every night from the 3-point line and expect to win games. Yeah. You have to at least hit a good 10 to 12 3-pointers a night to give yourself a chance. And I think the sooner this team builds around the guys that they've drafted, then we can kind of reevaluate. I get your frustration, though. I really do, of trying to hit that reset button. I think if you try to hit the reset button, you're just going to be another 4 years out, possibly, maybe even longer, because do you really have the people in the front office to trust to build a team? I look at Stan Van Gundy when he was here. He had a vision, and he tried to build a team. Now, obviously, it didn't work out. Obviously, we got bounced in the first round versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. But at least he tried to build a team around Andre Drummond. At least he tried to get guys in free agency to complement him. We haven't seen that yet so far. And obviously, Van Gundy was trying to win basketball games. Troy Weaver, so far in his tenure, is just trying to stockpile talent. And, if they win some games, cool. If not, he's going to get another top 5 draft pick. I think we just have to be a little patient. See what happens during this, February trading deadline. See if they're active like James Edwards had reported. And if they are, and we can get some talent around it, then we can kind of reevaluate. And I think a topic like this, we'll probably laugh at it in a couple of months.
I hope so. And real quick, I'm not trying to trade them while their value's high. I'm trying to trade them before their value plummets so low you get nothing for them.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to look at the coach you have to. This is a coach that loves his veterans. So maybe you go out and get some veterans that can, help you win games. And at the end of the day, that's in the NBA, that's who wins games. Veterans.
Yeah, a lot of questions, and we'll figure out, later on in the season if any of them are answered. But Gilbert Arenas had some choice words for rookie Asar. And he said, you're 20, going on 21, averaging 10 points per game. You're not part of my future. Gilbert Arenas averaged 10 points per game in his first year in the NBA. And crazy enough, he was also 20 years old. I think it's so crazy to say because basketball is played on both sides of the floor. And what Asar has showed us defensively, it shows that he's going to be a player in this league for a long time. And he has a skill set you can build around. It doesn't matter if he's averaging 20 points per game right away. Not everybody does that as a rookie. And we've even seen some rookies, Tyreek Evans, that averaged 25-5 his rookie year, and he was out of the league. He didn't get much better than that. So sometimes in some guys' rookie years, it's their peak year, and that's as best as it's going to get, Michael Carter-Williams. And then there's other guys like Asar Thompson where they average 10 points per game, but they develop the rest of their game, and then the scoring comes along later. Gilbert Arenas, man, just spewing off some stuff like he has been the last few years.
Yeah, I had some fun with their show. I've been told not to make fun of him anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, their host and their executive producer, I mean, we're pretty cool. He's like, yeah, man, like leave him alone. To Gil's point, now, whether you agree with him or not, he was saying Asar's 20, turning 21, only averaging 10. And a lot of people, they went to Gilbert Arenas' stats when he was 20 years old, right?
Yep.
And Gil averaged 10 for the Golden State Warriors. Now, Gil rebutted their next podcast saying, I wasn't saying 20, I was saying 21. He's like, when I was 21, I was averaging 18 for Golden State. Now, I'm not saying what he said has any merit, because if you look at Asar Thompson isn't a player that the Pistons plan on being the guy, the franchise player. He's a guy and a piece that the Pistons drafted to get better defensively. Now, if Asar, goes from like 10 points to, 13, 14 points, next year, I think that's progress. But for him to write him off saying like, hey, the Pistons should have built around him, I would trade him right now, I think it's kind of foolish. And there's more ways to impact the basketball game than scoring the basketball. There's defense, there's passing. And I think that's something that Asar does thrive in. You just as a Piston fan, you hope that he can develop that 3-point shot. You hope he can develop some sort of offensive game, because if he can, he's going to be a damn good player in the NBA and a damn good piece for the Pistons to not only have a part of their future.
No, I agree. And I don't know. I used to love Gilbert Arenas a lot as a basketball player. Hibachi was my guy. And he still averaged 10 points per game as a 20-year-old. He can't ignore that. And yeah, he did bump it up to 18 his second year in the league. I just think Asar is so promising on the defensive end. You have to forgive the lack of points per game, and you have to really focus on that side. And then you have to take into account his hard work and what he puts into his game in the offseason, and just give this guy a little bit more time. I definitely think Asar is a building block more so than some of these other young guys on the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, like I don't really know. I don't really get the point of picking on a kid like that either.
Yeah, same.
It's like, yeah, they're on a losing streak. Asar's not the reason why they're losing games. He's not the reason why they're losing by 20, 30 points every night. He's literally their best, perimeter defender. And I know that's debatable among Pistons fans, but to me, I think he's one of the better defenders on the team as a rookie. I don't think he's part of the problem. I think the way Gilbert Arenas and a lot of former NBA players, they just think if you're not scoring, you're not doing anything. And I think, yes, scoring is important. Yes, it's a scoring league, but there's other ways you can impact winning basketball games. It's not all scoring the basketball.
100%. Do we have any Q&A questions?
Yeah, you actually got one from SJ. He wanted you to answer. Who do you want to get another contract next year as a backup center? So he's basically asking you, like, if you had to sign a backup center next summer, who would it be?
Can I pull up the list real quick?
You can pull up the list. I don't even know who's available, honestly. I haven't even dug that deep into the free agency list yet.
As a backup center, you already know who I'm gonna. No, I'm not gonna say his name. I said him last week, and you made fun of me for it.
No, just say Hartenstein. Get it over with.
No, I'm not even gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it at all. A guy for okay. So what am I looking for in a center? First of all, in a backup, I want a guy that's had more than 5 years of experience. I want him to have more defensive chops, and I want him to be a guy that can set a screen and roll. I don't need him to be anything fancy or anything like that. If I were really looking at it, and I'm looking at the list right now, man, it's not a good list. Let me just say that I would bring in someone like, dude, a Bismack Biyombo, just like not great. He's already playing in a loser in Memphis. He got that huge contract one time ago, but he knows how to defend the rim. He knows how to rebound. He understands defensive basketball. He's familiar with Dwayne Casey. That's a guy I'm looking at. I don't even know if he would come over here. I would look at a guy like Cody Zeller. I know he's more offense, but like he also talks a lot on the floor. He sets a good screen. He knows how to roll. He knows how to finish at the rim. And then one more name, again, just from free agency. I would seriously consider bringing back Mason Plumlee. I love Mason Plumlee on here. Good passer, smart, know how to do a dribble handoff, could protect the rim a little bit, not going to cost you that much. He's familiar with the organization and the city. Those are three names that I would seriously consider bringing in for Detroit.
So as we were talking, I pulled up, some centers that will be free agents, UFAs, by the way, for the Pistons. And, the second guy that like just jumps off the list, who I don't even think he's a backup center, but I would love Nick Claxton on this team. But he's probably going to get paid. He probably is, but
I didn't imagine
backup. I might get killed for this. There's two guys that I'm looking at this list, and I was just like, you know what? Both of them would have an immediate impact. JaVale McGee. JaVale McGee has championship experience.
Yep.
He's played for numerous teams. He's a little bit older. Spot Track has him at 30, almost 36 years old. He's a little bit older. I don't know. Some Pistons fans have kind of talked about this. Andre Drummond, he'll be a free agent. I don't know if you want to bring him back as a backup center behind Duren. That's a possibility. And I'll just throw one more guy out there. I've always liked Alex Len from afar. And he's just a guy that every time I watch him, he's just productive. It feels like he would be a good backup center. I mean, like the backup center market isn't as bad as I thought it would be. There are some guys on here that, could play or not play, but could get a contract from the Pistons. It's not as bad as I thought it would be. I don't know if, Pistons fans would want Plum Dog Millionaire back. They hated him when he was here.
I don't know why. I don't know why everybody hated Mason Plumlee. He was awesome. I thought he was great, pushing the ball up the floor. I actually did think about JaVale McGee, but I didn't want to say his name just because, one, I don't know if he'll even be playing next year, because he's been playing for 16 years. I can't believe I forgot that he's actually in Sacramento. I thought he was still with the Lakers. Mm-hmm. I really like Robin Lopez, too. I know he's not playing a lot for Milwaukee, but I've always been a fan of his. And, Detroit has the best hair in the league. Why not bring another guy in with some good hair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking because I know some people say Chris Boucher, but Chris Boucher is not a free agent. He might be he's not a UFA. He might be a restricted free agent. I want to look at the restricted free agent centers and see. Luka Garza, wouldn't that be something? Yeah, there's not it's just James Wiseman. This guy Sandro, who's with the Spurs right now, but he's actually playing with the Austin Spurs in the G League, and he's absolutely killing it right now. Micah Potter, who's another G League guy. Jay Huff, these are all G League guys. So all the restricted centers are mostly G League guys, but I mean, that's been something that I've always wanted the Pistons to do, is just kind of get like that backup veteran center to help, Jalen Duren and whatever centers that are still on this team. Maybe Marvin Bagley is still on this team, whether or not you want to keep or trade him. Those are the type of guys that I think that could really, help this team get in the right direction.
Yeah, I think our list was pretty solid. There's some guys with player options. Kevin Love, Christian Wood, Thomas Bryant. I wouldn't mind him.
He's a hothead, but I like him.
Yeah, he fits right in. Jackson Hayes, Drew Eubanks. I like him too. He knows his role. And then there's Rashawn Holmes, who I don't think he's declining his player option. He's due to make $12.9 million. But I like him as well. I don't know. I think great question though. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't really know if they're looking to upgrade that backup 5 spot. Who knows? Watch them throw the bag at Wiseman. Shout the Wise though. Let's see. This was actually a question from Wes earlier in the podcast, and I did want to talk about it a little bit. So he said, how do we feel about Bob Myers being the new GM? And before we do answer that, I had no idea because I said I wouldn't be surprised if he was the new GM. He's currently working for ESPN. Yeah. He was with the Golden State Warriors during their championship runs. Bob Myers actually has a connection with Arn Tellem. And you kind of can connect the dots. If it doesn't work out with Troy, I wouldn't be surprised if he got a call.
Do you actually think he would come to Detroit, though?
Money talks, baby.
I also, he does kind of remind me of a GM that would be satisfied in taking a mess over like this and rebuilding them into their glory days. Like, I think some GMs are just like, I'm looking for the next project, and this is the next project. I would welcome Bob Myers in, but I do think Pistons fans would, we would be in for such a. Did he draft Steph Curry, or did he? I got to look that up.
I'm not 100% sure. I know he's been in Golden State for a number of years. I know this isn't really a question, just kind of like how we feel about it. I wouldn't be surprised though, Wes, like if you see his name, but at the same time, it's like he's got a cushy ESPN job where, he's making some money just to talk basketball. Why would you leave that? Why would you want to, tarnish your record? I don't know, man. Like, I can't really see any. I know someone said Travis Schlenk, who used to work with the Warriors as well, and then he took over the Atlanta Hawks front office, but he got ran out because the Hawks owner's son kind of like took charge of the front office. But I mean, I guess those are two guys, like former Warrior guys, that you could possibly look at. Like, worst comes to worst if they're looking for a new GM.
I mean, he didn't draft Steph Curry, but he did draft the guys to complete the championship team and surrounded Steph Curry with those guys. So I would bring in Bob Myers. And he also convinced Kevin Durant to play in Golden State. So, I mean, also the money talked. But anyway, like, I would welcome Bob Myers. We should really get into this one time what we're looking for in the next GM of the Detroit Pistons.
I don't even think it would matter, dude.
Well, dreams.
It's just you kind of look. I don't want to say too much because I tried to post a video last week. I don't think I told you this. So we had a segment last week, who's to blame for the Pistons front office.
Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube muted the whole damn thing, man. They wouldn't let us talk about it.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. I don't know what happened. I looked at my computer, looked at my video editor. I could listen to it fine. As soon as I uploaded on YouTube, got muted. I was like, okay, I see you guys. I see you.
It's pretty messed up. If you want to hear the whole conversation, you can go to Spotify and check out the Pistons Talk Podcast.
Shameless plug right there. Love it. This comes from Jeremy Banks. Was losing Corey Joseph and Ronnie McGregor that bad for the team?
Man, no. Losing Monte Morris for a quad injury that we don't even know how severe it was That was worse than losing Kojo and Magruder. Losing Boyan for the first, I don't know, not even half of the season, but the first quarter of the season, that was worse than that. But it does seem like Kojo and Magruder are cursing this team, man. They didn't want us to win without him.
Rodney was a good vet. I think it had more to do with Dwayne Casey than those two. Not to say that they didn't have a role, but I think Dwayne Casey, the guys were really familiar with Casey. All the guys that, have been drafted over the last 3 years, they couldn't say enough good things about him. But at the same time, there wasn't as many wins, but at least there were some. But I don't know. I don't really know if those two were helping us win games, but it's hard to say because we won 17 last year and then we're at 2 right now. So maybe I'm crazy. Oh, did you see this? So Brandon Jennings was asking the Pistons to bring him back for a collaboration, which I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's, inviting him out to a game to talk to the team. I don't know if he's looking for a coaching spot. I don't know if he's looking for a front office gig. I don't know what that means. I doubt it's playing. I doubt he wants to play right now, especially for this team. But hey, man, I wouldn't hate if, Brandon Jennings was at a Pistons game just chilling.
Yeah, I wonder what he wants. I think he's into fashion. I think he has a fashion. I don't know why I know that. I think he answered it on the Knuckleheads podcast. So maybe that's what it has to do. Maybe designing some sweatshirts or a jersey or doing something with the Pistons in that type of collaborative role. But if it was in talk of him coming back and being a developmental coach to work with the guards, yeah, I would take that. I don't know if he was always the most fundamentally correct guard in Detroit, but he was fun to watch when he was healthy.
Dude, he was so fun to watch. I still remember that 13-game win streak they went on because I think they were 5-23, and then they waived Josh Smith. They trade Tony Mitchell for Anthony Tolliver, who no one knew who the hell that was. And then they just go on this win streak. That's the last time the Pistons have actually went on a significant win streak, more than a 5+ game winning streak, which is crazy to think about.
So he does have a fashion company. It's called Tough Crowd. That's his brand. That's his brand.
Hey man, collab with Big Sean, man. Literally.
Whoa. Since we just mentioned Tough Crowd, send us some shirts. I'll wear it on the podcast.
Shout out to Brandon Jennings, man, for real. Let's see. This is a good question from Ryan. Is it more important for us to get an Elite 4 or an Elite 2-3? How do you prioritize that?
I think it's more important to get an Elite 4 because the Elite 2, I feel I don't know, because the hole at the 4 position for the Pistons is so wide. It's really we're playing at a deficit every game, whoever we play in at the 4 spot. That's why I think it's more important, because you can play Cade at the 2 or the 3. You can play Asar at the 2 or the 3. You can throw Jaden Ivey at the 2. You can throw Alec Burks. You can throw Marcus Sasser. You have options at those positions on the Pistons. I would still like them to upgrade at the 3 spot, whether it's the draft or whether it's through free agency. But in my opinion, the 4 spot has been a weakness for the Pistons for a couple of years now. And you're really never going to be able to compete until you find a player to fill that position. And I've said it before, I don't think it's Isaiah Stewart. I think he'd be better coming off the bench. Isaiah Stewart would be a really good 8th man on a play-in and on a playoff team. I think he'd be a 9 or 10 man on a contender. So, but he's a starter for the Pistons. That just should tell you how bad it is at that position. So 4 is more important to me.
I think that an elite 4-man right now is so rare in the NBA because if you look around the NBA, there's more elite 2s and elite 3s than there are 4s. But to answer your question, Ryan, what's more important? I would say the 4 position, just because I don't really think Duran. I think Duran is just going to be a center. I know, like, you've heard Troy and Monty say, "Oh, he could play power forward." I think he's just going to be a center, and that's fine. And to kind of go even further, there's a 4 that's going to be a free agent that I think the Pistons need to consider targeting, in my opinion, and that's Pascal Siakam. I know he's not on perimeter, but I think, to me, he would help this team out a lot.
Okay, let me just throw out a couple names at the 4 position. You tell me if you still think it's not that elite. Giannis, I don't know why they have Anthony Davis listed there, but they have Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Zion, Lauri Markkanen, Sabonis, Holmgren, Paul George, Julius Randle, Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., Pascal Siakam, Paolo Banchero, Bobby Portis, Tobias Harris, Aaron Gordon, Draymond Green. Those are some pretty elite names, don't you think, at the 4? And then when I'm looking at the 2 guards, like, yeah, you got Devin Booker, Anfernee Simons, Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, even though he's 35, Desmond Bane, but then there's kind of a drop-off to, like, Terry Rozier, CJ McCollum, Lonnie Walker, Emmanuel Quickley, Bogdanovich, Alex Caruso. I think the 4 position, I think it's maybe I don't know. I just feel like the 2 guard is kind of weak in the NBA right now. There's a lot of fun guys and there's a bunch of names that I missed. I just think the 2, you can get away with an average 2 in the NBA, but you can't get away with an average 4 in today's NBA.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just saying it's more difficult to get those guys. Not that it's not an elite skill or it's not an elite position. I think it's more difficult to find those elite 4s. Now, whether you want to say Jeremy Grant was an elite 4, I'll leave that up to you guys. There's subpar guys like Julius Randle, but Julius Randle has had a really good season. I mean, there's guys like Anthony Davis who, if you want to say he's a power forward center, whatever, he's an elite player. I mean, not Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, even though he's a center, he's playing the 4. He's still an all-star. I think it's harder to find those 4s because so many teams, have them locked up on contracts.
I agree.
Yeah, like Lauri Markkanen, who we've talked about ad nauseum. I think we've been talking about Lauri Markkanen since last season, and now people are just kind of getting on track. Let's go trade for Lauri Markkanen. I think, to me, he's the only 4 that's actually realistic where you could try to trade for Lauri Markkanen. I just think now all these teams around the NBA want him because he's valuable, because, he's a guy that can stretch the floor, score some buckets, but defensively, he's not locked down. But he's playable at least. But, finding a legitimate power forward in today's NBA is very difficult. I mean, you look at the power forwards that are unrestricted free agents this summer. You have Tobias Harris, Pascal Siakam, former Piston Kelly Olynyk, Robert Covington, Kyle Anderson, Thaddeus Young, Danilo Gallinari, Taurean Prince, Markieff Morris, Dario Saric, James Johnson, who's not a free agent. He just got signed by the Pacers. Bol, Anthony Gill, who retired, Kenya Martin Jr., and Luka Samick. I mean, that list is pretty bleak outside of like Tobias and Pascal. There's some, average bench players that possibly you could sign. But I mean, the Pistons want to upgrade that position. I think Pascal would be at the top of my wish list if I'm a Piston fan watching this.
You want to hear the funniest nickname for Anthony Davis?
Sure,
maybe street clothes.
Yeah, I think I've heard that. We actually got Mega Hustle has a nickname for Monty Williams. Can you guess it?
No, I cannot. There's so many different names. No, I don't think I can.
Instead of Monty, he's calling him Bonty, like Bonty Williams, like a bounty hunter.
Okay, like that.
Yes, stealing the Brink truck from Gores. You guys are funny, man. You guys are funny, man. I appreciate each and every one of you guys in here. Like I really do. There's just so many good questions. I probably just want to do one or two more because we have been on for about an hour and a half, and at least you guys can hear me this time. Oh man. I'm trying to see what are the Pistons. Before I do answer this question, if you guys didn't notice or you didn't know, your Motor City Cruise won a basketball game, and with that win, they will be playing in the Winter Showcase for the G League.
Hey,
shout out to the Cruise, man. They beat the Winter City Bulls 104-102, and Jared Roden had 25 and 12 tonight. So shout out to him.
Dude, that's insane, man. Dude, good for them. That's so cool.
I love you, Bravo, but there's no effing way OKC would accept this trade. There's no way.
I would take
There's no way.
I would take a repeat. God, that'd be amazing. Damn.
Yeah. Would you consider trading Cade to OKC for Chet, J-Dub, and 3 first-round picks? Yeah, there's no way that OKC would even offer that. If they did, they're drunk.
That would be insane if that actually happened. I don't even know if you could pull that off in a video game.
I don't think so. I don't even think you could pull that off in 2K. But I don't know, man. Like that's just crazy. We'll do one more question. This comes from Gary Ponta. He said, why do the Pistons have 3 guards as two-way players plus their 5 other guards? That's I don't know, Gary. I really don't. Because
Troy had faith that Duran, Isaiah Stewart, Marvin Bagley, and James Wiseman was enough at the 4 and the 5. That's my guess.
So you got Cade, Ivy, Sasser, Burks. Well, that's 4 right there. Killian Hayes.
Monte Morris.
Monte Morris. Oh, that's 6 guards. Damn. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea, man. That's crazy. Gary, I don't know. It's madness. That's why I thought that they were going to be – they're supposed to be active this deadline. There's no reason to have 6 guards. No way. Like, no functioning NBA franchise has that many guards. Like, I'd rather have that in wings. Like 3-and-D wings just to, spread the ball around and, defend and, surround Cade with some functioning pieces. As for the two-way players, so who are the two-way players? I can't even think right now.
Malcolm Casalone, Jared Roden, and I'm blanking on the other guy. Stanley Amude.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Stanley's more of a forward, but he can play the 2 if you need him to. Malcolm Casalone, I'm actually not even mad at because he's actually playing really well in the G League. And Jared Roden is just a monster in the G League. Like, he had 25 points and 12 rebounds against the Bulls tonight, or the Windy City Bulls. But I don't know, man. That's the $1 million question. Why have 4 bigs and why have 7 guards? Makes no sense. Or 6 guards.
Dude, like I said, Troy believed in all the bigs we had on this team.
Yeah, Monty wants it faster. You are right. I remember him saying, "Get him, please." Man, if that was available, I think most Pistons fans would take it. Killian and Burke for Sexton. Sexton's balling in Utah right now.
Yeah, I'm a fan of his.
Yeah, I don't know. I just can't wait to see what happens. It's going to be a Woj tweet, and it'll say the Pistons have traded so-and-so for cash considerations. You already know it's coming.
I don't think they make a move. I've said that before. I do not think they make a move.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they should too, but I don't know if they do it.
You think it's so marginal that Pistons fans just won't give a shit?
Oh, someone will.
Yeah. What's Beef Stew's trade value right now? I have no idea.
I
don't know.
I think Boston wanted him at one point during the offseason, but I don't even know who they want. I think they were wanting to give up Peyton Pritchard or something.
I don't know what his value is. Probably a rotational player, maybe a second. Like, you think about it, he's probably going to be the only player left on this team from the 2020 draft class.
Well, yeah, most likely.
And unless Monty wants to keep Killian around to give him a 4-year extension.
I mean, he hasn't done it yet.
It's something Lance would do. Yeah, Cade for Keldon and Trey Jones.
I want to do that.
Yeah, he loves Keldon Johnson.
I do. Sweeten the deal. Throwing Zach Collins, those three and Cade. Sure, why not?
You don't want white boy Collins on your team, man.
Dude, think about how you can flip Zach Collins to the Utah Jazz for somebody, okay? Just think about it. Whatever team Danny Ainge is on, he wants him. I'm never gonna let the joke die, by the way. I'm never gonna let it die.
Yeah, if you guys are OGs, you know that joke. Corey damn near freaking shout out to Corey, man. Corey he tried to be professional, but that made him crack. He had to crack on that one. I would trade Stu in a heartbeat to get out of that contract. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of fans weren't a fan of that contract. I don't know, man. I was looking. I know this is off topic, then we can hang up. I was looking back. So this was, I believe, 2019 when the Pistons they traded John Lure to the Cavs, I believe. So they had like 3 picks, right? And I had Grant Williams at 15, Naz Reid at 45, and I can't remember the other guy. And I was like, man, I said I should be a GM. And so there's some impact players right there, man, like crazy. I'm gonna have to find the post, man. I was just like, dude, there's no way. Like,
I've said that before. Like, I think I could draft an all-star before some GMs. I really do.
I don't know, man. I feel like there's some people in the front office that make our GM's job more difficult than it needs to be.
Yeah. You finding something more interesting?
No, just reading some comments from people. Go after Klay Thompson? Absolutely not. Jaden Ivey for Trey Murphy. I think you'd have to add a little bit more. I like the groundwork for that trade, though, Derek. Look where your head's at. Let's trade some of Utah and New Orleans and look for lottery picks. Ivy for Jordan Poole? Absolutely not. We don't have enough baddies for Poole to drop 50 a night. We just don't. Washington's a perfect place for him. You got Mia Khalifa out there. And we can hang it up at that. If you want to tell people where they can find the podcast, you can.
Hang on. Thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk Podcast. Do us a favor, go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating, vote in our polls, and more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
Peace, guys.